Okay, picture this. You know the tiny graphite point of a pencil, about 5 millimeters.
Huh?
Now think about particles even smaller than that. Microscopic, really.
Hmm.
And these tiny things might be having well, surprisingly big impact on your health.
Right.
Today we're doing a deep dive into microplastics. We've heard from a lot of you actually sharing concerns about these little bits of plastic that seem to be everywhere.
Hmm.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Let's try to understand the health risks, what the science is saying, and figure out some practical, everyday ways we can all cut down on our exposure.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, isn't it? Something that small causing such potentially big problems.
It really is. And what's fascinating, or maybe concerning, is exactly that scale difference. How can something we can barely or can't even see have such a potentially huge reach when it comes to our health?
Exactly. It raises some big questions.
It does. About our modern environment.
Right. So let's just jump in. We hear microplastics all the time. For anyone maybe just catching up, what exactly are we talking about? And what's this other term, nanoplastics? Are they different?
Good question. So microplastics basically are any plastic bits smaller than that 5 millimeter pencil tip you mentioned. Think small fragments.
Okay.
Then nanoplastics, that's diving even smaller, way smaller. We're talking particles less than zero point 0.1 micrometers.
Wow. Okay. Point 0.1 micrometers. That's hard to even imagine.
It is. To give you some perspective, that's like thousands of times smaller than the width of a single human hair.
Mind-bogglingly tiny. So it's not just that these particles exist, it's their size that's a big part of the issue.
That's exactly it. Their incredibly small size is, well, potentially what makes them more impactful, health-wise.
Oh, so.
Well, because they're so minute, they might be absorbed more easily by our bodies. They could potentially navigate biological barriers, think the lining of your gut, for instance, perhaps more readily than larger bits could.
Okay, that definitely raises the concern level. So apart from just the size and how common they are, what are the main reasons scientists are worried? What are the potential health problems?
Right. Well, two main worries keep popping up in the research. First, their potential to act as carcinogens.
Meaning they could potentially contribute to cancer?
That's the concern, yes.
Yeah.
And second, their role as endocrine disruptors.
Endocrine disruptor. Okay, we've talked about hormones before. Can you just quickly remind us what that means in this context?
Sure. So endocrine disruptors are essentially external chemicals that can mess with your body's hormones.
Mess with them how?
They can interfere. Think of your hormones as this incredibly complex communication system running your body,
Yeah.
regulating everything from, sexual function and metabolism to your stress response, even your thyroid.
Okay, a whole communication network. So
Right.
if microplastics get in there and disrupt the signals, what could happen? What are the ripple effects?
Well, if you connect the dots, these kinds of disruptions could have really far-reaching effects, potential impacts on your metabolism, how you process energy,
Right.
your appetite and weight control, inflammation levels in the body, how you handle stress, definitely your gut health, and maybe even mental and emotional well-being. It's all very connected.
Wow. It feels like these things must be everywhere then. Where do we actually, bump into microplastics in our daily lives? It feels almost invisible.
That's not far off, unfortunately. They are in a lot of places, starting with, well, the obvious,
Yeah.
what we eat and drink.
Okay.
Think about plastic food containers, those Tupperware-style tubs many of us use. And, of course, plastic water bottles.
Right. Those are the easy ones to spot. But what about less obvious sources?
Even those convenient prepackaged food trays you get at the supermarket.
Ah.
Or the plastic bags that pre-washed salad comes in. They can shed particles. Then you've got plastic cups. And even a lot of paper cups have a thin plastic lining inside.
I didn't even think about the paper cups.
Yeah, and don't forget the linings inside many food and drink cans. It's important to realize this isn't just about, like, visible chunks of plastic floating around.
Okay, so it's pretty hard to avoid plastic with food. What can we actually do about the packaging we already use to maybe lessen the shedding?
Right, so one really key thing is heat. Heat seems to accelerate the release of these particles.
Makes sense.
So microwaving food in plastic containers. Probably best to avoid that if you can. The heat can sort of break down the plastic structure a bit, letting more tiny particles loose.
Okay, no microwaving in plastic. That seems doable. Any other common heat things we should reconsider?
Yeah, even running plastic containers through a really hot dishwasher cycle might contribute. The heat and the water jets. And beyond food and drink, a really big source, one that people often don't immediately connect, is actually our clothing.
Our clothes, seriously.
Yeah. Clothes made from synthetic fibers.
Mm-hmm.
Think polyester, nylon, acrylic,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. When you wash these fabrics, especially in warm or hot water, and even during tumble drying from the friction, they shed tiny plastic fibers, microplastics.
Wow.
These fibers then go down the drain into our wastewater systems. The scale is pretty staggering. Some studies estimate a single load of laundry could release hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, of these microfibers.
Millions from one wash.
Yeah. And those eventually make their way into rivers, lakes, oceans. They get ingested by marine life. So it can indirectly come back to us if you eat seafood.
So it's a whole cycle. The plastics from our washing machine end up back in the environment, potentially on our plates later.
Exactly. It really drives home how interconnected everything is, our daily actions, environmental health.
Yeah, it definitely does.
And it shows why tackling this needs, a broad approach, but also why individual choices can actually make a difference bit by bit.
Okay, but knowing they're just so widespread, it can feel a little overwhelming maybe. What are some concrete practical things we can actually do as individuals to try and reduce our own exposure?
Absolutely. It can feel daunting, but there are definitely impactful steps you can take. Let's start simple. Hydration. Opting for a glass water bottle instead of a plastic one. That's a straightforward switch.
Okay, easy enough. What about food storage at home?
Same principle, really.
Yeah.
Using glass containers for leftovers or packing lunches instead of plastic tubs, that can cut down exposure over time.
Right.
And even with things like those prepackaged salads or berries, giving them a good rinse under cold running water before you eat them might help wash off some surface particles.
Oh, interesting. Just a rinse can help.
It might remove some, yeah.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps. Now, thinking about the air inside our homes,
Airborne microplastics, is that a thing?
it can be, yeah. From textiles, dust settling. So using HEPA air filters in your home could be beneficial. HEPA filters are designed to trap really small particles, including some microplastic fragments.
Okay, HEPA filters. What about filtering our drinking water?
Good point. A reverse osmosis, or RO, filtration system is generally considered pretty effective at removing a wide range of contaminants, and that includes microplastics.
Reverse osmosis, I've heard of those. Are they? Are there any downsides?
Well, yes, that's a fair question. RO is very good at purifying, but it's so good it often strips out naturally occurring minerals too, things like magnesium, calcium, which your body actually needs.
Oh.
So if you go the RO route, you might want to think about making sure you get enough minerals from your diet. Or some people add a tiny pinch of high-quality sea salt or rock salt, like Himalayan pink salt, back into their filtered water. It's about being aware of that trade-off.
That's a really important detail. Good
Yeah.
to know. What about frozen foods? They almost always come in plastic bags.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. A proactive step there is maybe when you get home from the store, transfer the frozen food, veggies, fruit, whatever, out of the original plastic bag and into a glass container before you put it in the freezer long term.
Oh.
And definitely before you heat or cook it, get it out of the plastic first.
Right. And just generally those single-use plastics we run into everywhere.
Yeah, just being more mindful of them is key. Trying to avoid them when you can. And be extra cautious with any plastic item that looks damaged, cracked, or heavily scratched.
Okay.
Or if it's been exposed to heat, like that plastic water bottle you accidentally left in the hot car all afternoon. Heat and physical damage can make plastics leach more readily.
Good reminder about the hot car. Are there any other, maybe less obvious places microplastics might be hiding?
Well, cosmetics and personal care products can be a source sometimes.
Really?
Yeah. It's worth looking for products formulated without things like bisphenols and phthalates. These are chemicals often used in plastics and sometimes fragrances.
How do you even find that out?
There's a great resource, the Environmental Working Group, ewg.org. They have databases where you can check products and ingredients. It's really helpful for finding safer options.
ewg.org. Got it.
Oh, and even vacuum sealing food uses plastic. While some of those plastics are designed to be more stable, it's still plastic, so it's something to be aware of.
You mentioned recycling codes earlier on the bottom of containers. Those little numbers in the triangle, do they matter?
They do give you some information, yes. They tell you the type of plastic resin. As a general rule of thumb, it's often advised to try and avoid plastics with the code 3, that's PVC, and code 6, which is polystyrene or styrofoam.
3 and 6. Why those specifically?
They tend to be less stable and might leach certain chemicals more easily than others. But honestly, as we said, any plastic container that's visibly scratched or damaged should probably be tossed, regardless of the code.
Okay. Are there any specific types of plastic containers we should be extra wary of?
Yes, actually. Black plastic food containers. Be particularly cautious with those.
Why black plastic?
They're often made using recycled plastics, and sometimes that includes plastic from old electronics. So they might contain a wider mix of potentially harmful substances, like heavy metals or flame retardants. Definitely avoid heating food in black plastic containers. Never do that.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. So it really boils down to just being more aware, reading labels, thinking about the materials.
Exactly. Making informed choices whenever you can. It's not about perfection, it's about awareness.
Right. Okay, so speaking of specific choices, we got some great questions from listeners. Let's tackle a few of those. Someone asked for a bit more on frozen food packaging. We touched on it, but any final thought?
Yeah, just to really hammer it home. The best bet is to transfer frozen stuff out of the plastic bag it came in and into a glass container for storage in your freezer. And definitely before you heat it up. Just get it away from the plastic when temperature changes are involved.
Got it. Transfer to glass. Another listener was asking about sunscreen. They nearly always come in plastic tubes. Any recommendations there?
Good question. For sunscreen, look for ones that state they are free of bisphenols and phthalates, those plastic-related chemicals we mentioned.
Okay.
Also, maybe consider creams or lotions instead of sprays. There's some concern about potentially inhaling the fine particles from spray sunscreens.
Ah, okay.
And again, that ewg.org website is fantastic for sunscreen ratings based on ingredients. They look at safety and effectiveness. As for brands, Pavita is one example that often gets good ratings. They focus on natural ingredients. Yeah. But there are others too.
Great resource, ewg.org. Okay, next question. Using plastic wrap for cooking, like covering something in the oven.
Oh, definitely avoid that. Yeah. Most standard plastic wrap, like cling film, is just not designed for oven temperatures.
Right. It would melt, surely.
It can degrade, yeah, and potentially release harmful chemicals right into your food as it heats up. If you need to cover something in the oven, parchment paper is a much, much safer bet. Better than plastic wrap and often better than aluminum foil, too, especially for direct food contact at high heat.
Okay, parchment paper. Good alternative. Speaking of aluminum foil, someone asked about that too. Any best practices? Shiny side, matte side? Does it matter?
Yes, the shiny versus matte debate. It comes from the manufacturing process. Generally, it's suggested to have the shiny side touching the food. It's apparently slightly less reactive.
Interesting.
But the bigger point, maybe, is to try and limit using aluminum foil directly with food at very high temperatures, because small amounts of aluminum can potentially leach into the food.
Especially acidic foods, right?
Exactly. Acidic or salty foods can increase that leaching, and if your foil gets really damaged, heavily scratched, or turns black, definitely discard it. Again, for baking especially, parchment paper is often a more stable choice.
That shiny side tip is fascinating. I bet a lot of people don't know that. Okay, another specific one. Aluminum coffee capsules. Those single-serve pods. Concerns there.
Well, for occasional use, probably okay.
Hmm.
But if you're relying on them daily, it's maybe not ideal.
Fair enough.
The process uses hot water under high pressure, right? That combination can encourage the release of aluminum, which is a heavy metal, from the capsule into your coffee.
Ah, and heavy metals aren't great.
No. Over time, accumulation of heavy metals can potentially impact the nervous system, the cognitive function, maybe links to neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, tremors, even mood issues. It's something to be mindful of.
So what's the alternative for daily coffee?
Well, traditional brewing methods are generally better from this perspective. Using a French press, a pour-over with a paper filter, or an automatic drip machine made mostly of stainless steel or glass components.
Okay, makes sense. One last listener question. What about the capsules used for supplements? Are those plastic? Should we worry about them?
That's a really observant question. Yes, some supplement capsules are made from materials that could be considered plastic-like or contain plasticizers. If you take a lot of supplements every day, the material of the capsule itself could theoretically add up.
So what should we look for?
When you have a choice, look for supplements that use capsules made from vegetable cellulose, often labeled veggie caps, gelatin, though not suitable for vegetarians, vegans, or even sometimes beeswax. These are generally preferred over capsules that might contain plastic-derived ingredients.
Wow, okay. That's another layer to consider. This has been incredibly insightful. But I have to admit, listening to all this, it's a lot. It's easy to feel a bit, I don't know, overwhelmed by how pervasive these microplastics are.
Oh, absolutely. It's completely understandable to feel that way. It seems like they're in everything.
Yeah.
But it's really important to remember, you don't have to do everything perfectly overnight. Even making small, informed changes, switching to glass containers, filtering your water, being mindful of heat, these things add up. They can collectively make a real difference in reducing your exposure over time.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. Progress, not perfection. It's about awareness, empowering you to make slightly better choices where you can.
That's a good way to look at it. Staying informed, making conscious choices. That seems like the best path forward for our long-term health.
It really is. So maybe as you go about your day after listening to this, just think, what's one small, manageable change you might consider making? Just one thing, based on what we've talked about.
That's a great practical thought to leave everyone with. Thank you so much for walking us through all this today. It's been a really valuable deep dive.
My pleasure. Hopefully it provided some useful insights and practical ideas.
Definitely. And thank you all for joining us. We hope this helps you navigate this complex topic.
And if you have more questions, keep exploring, keep asking. Information is key.
Absolutely. Until our next deep dive, take care, everyone.